Bama versus Georgia, the preview, Chris. I'll start off here with Bama. Here, this feels kind of weird, obviously growing up in Atlanta, Georgia as a kid, big Georgia fan here. Pretty split this game is, right? ESPN there, you can see he's got him 52.1% leaning towards Georgia. I'm here to talk about Bama, though. Listen, Jalen Milroe has improved a lot this year. I think earlier in the offset, we were trying to figure out who was going to be their quarterback. Bama struggled a little bit early on. They've gotten into the same page here. Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond. I mean, those guys, especially last week, what happened with Auburn. I mean, I don't say this very often because it doesn't happen very often, but some of those calls in last week's game kind of skewed a little bit against Bama, especially that triple motion Auburn got away with, and they called it on Bama. They got them backed up into 4th and 31 to kind of end that game. They only rushed like 2 guys. Milroe, the prayer at Jordan Hare, basically, dude. Prayer at Jordan Hare. That's what I want to call it. I mean,
true.
Basically, I mean, sometimes, what's that old saying? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than be good. I think Bama's both of them. They're lucky and they're good. Here's the other side of it. We know Bama's going to kind of come up here, and I want to say this. Bama's defense got kind of gashed in that run game a little bit, right? It's not as simple as that. I think Bama wanted to walk people down in the box. They were going to kind of give them the passing game. They were able to kind of hit them, and then they started kind of dinking over top of them. They started kind of hitting a little bit more. Auburn did in that passing game there. So Georgia's going to have to kind of look to take advantage of that. A running back, McClellan, I think he's banged up. He's questionable coming into this game. They're still going to figure it out as the week goes on. If he's out, then that kind of – I'm not saying that makes them one-dimensional. They have good players, but they don't have anybody that I think is produced at that same level. Exactly. They've got guys that might be better, down the road, I think, than McClellan, but they don't have anybody right now that's produced at that same level as he has. So, Chris, kind of touch on the Bulldogs a little bit. Tell me a little bit about my old team.
Yeah, your team. We know what Georgia is, man. 12-0. I'm going to talk about last week's game a little bit against Georgia Tech. I think that score surprised a lot of people. If you did watch that game like, Christian and I did, I don't put too much credit into this one. I mean, I hats off to Georgia Tech. But I'm going to say this. I know people don't want to believe it happens, but it definitely does. Ask Auburn a couple weeks ago against New Mexico State. I think Georgia's kind of looking ahead to Alabama. They've known for the past couple of weeks that they're going to be playing in this championship game. And that, like I said, that take away nothing from Georgia Tech. They played tough. They had some big plays. Of course, somebody scored on Georgia. Georgia gets down 7-0 every game. That seems to be a trend this year so far, especially the second half of the season. But, I think this game, and you're right, Christian, I think this game is going to be won and lost in the trenches. Georgia's a physical football team. Alabama is a pretty damn physical football team as well. They want to both pound the ball. Alabama's offense, though, is predicated on big plays, especially in the second half of the season. Milroe, if one thing he can do throwing the ball, he throws the deep ball very well. He's very explosive once he gets outside of the pocket. I think people forget how fast that kid is. He's a big dude, but he can really run. Georgia needs to limit that. Peyton Thorne ripped him up on the ground a little bit, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but he did against Alabama. So is Carson Beck going to do that, though? And that's my point. I don't think Carson Beck's going to run much. That's not really his style. One thing Carson Beck can do, though, is pick you apart. He's thrown the ball incredibly well. I've said it all year. I don't think he's played a bad game all year. I will say, though, Christian, this might hurt you hurt you a little bit to hear this, but he probably played his worst game, I think, against Georgia Tech. He threw some balls that I thought were a little questionable. And that's okay to have a bad game. He didn't play bad. I don't want people to take that as he played bad. He didn't. But there were a few throws. The interception, I don't believe really was his fault, but if the ball's tipped, that happens. But this is the crazy thing. And I've been saying this for weeks to Christian because, Christian doesn't ever want to talk too much about his Bulldogs. The last team to beat Georgia 29 games ago was Alabama in this same game a couple years ago. So it's not going to happen this year, Christian. I'm giving you my prediction. Give me UGA 27, Alabama 21 in a close one.
Very similar in our thoughts here. Give me UGA 34, Alabama 28. Yeah, I like it. Let's go.